Right. Welcome to another Infinity Kingdom guide. In this one, we're gonna continue down the path that we've been doing lately, trying to set up three setups, three builds, three marches that work well in unison. That means complementary to one another in terms of Tower of Knowledge skills, as well as their primary, function and how they work out, what they're good against. So I've gotten quite a lot of players sending me requests, to do these kinds of setups. I've done a couple by now, and it seems like at least some of you want more of these guides. So I'm gonna continue doing them whenever I have the time. For this one, we have been I've been looking into a free-to-play version of the Earth Wind Hybrid, using it as a second or third team. Furthermore, there are quite a lot of people running water mains who are asking what can I do with my second and my third, and this is what I've come up with. It should be said that these are well, they are not entirely free to play, but they are as free to play as it comes. You have to purchase the third builder in Infinity Kingdom and unlock Merlin that way. The rest of it you can grind out free to play until it takes an event, but it's doable. Some players prefer fire, some players prefer lightning, but many players are writing in saying that they're water main and they've had that since the beginning of the game, and they don't really they don't want to swap that out. It takes forever to get a new dragon arm, and what they need is to make their water main fit with a second or a third build. So that's what we're gonna do for this one, and I'm gonna use a real player example from the community, someone who reached out and asked me to set up a free-to-play 3 March setup, and this guide is what we came up with. So it's gonna be a complete 3 March setup that fits with what this guy has going for him. If you are a free-to-play or low spender, then you may be able to take some inspiration from this. Of course, adjusted to your meta, but the basic ideas and concepts can be replicated quite easily. We ended up doing a water main. We're gonna do a fire secondary, and we're gonna run a Earth Wind hybrid as our third March. It is a question of personal preference and what you have, what level are your dragons in terms of what do you designate as your second and third, meaning which passives should you prioritize getting upgraded first. If you have a complete set of Tower Knowledge passives for all 3 Marches, then you can kind of call both the Fire and the Earth Wind hybrid a secondary team. And that is really the emphasis again in this 3-stage setup, that we are doing Tower of Knowledge dispersion and synergies in a way where all builds are powerful. So just quickly the current player setup. First things first, we've got 4 different elements going, and that's what I hinted at in the beginning, because we have an attempt of a lightning second as is. That's the first thing we're gonna tinker with, because we need 3 marches to fit for combat. We don't need 4. Our 4th is just a placeholder. Unless you are a giant whale, you're only going to be using that for nodes and that kind of off thing. So what we're going to do is we are going to leave out lightning. We're going to scrap lightning simply because we don't have any solid replacements for Peter. You can run lightning as your second if you go Louis or Tokugawa later, or you run an off Charles or something like that, but for the purposes of this guide and for keeping it free to play friendly, low spender friendly, as well as fitting with this player's loadout, we are going to scrap lightning. It should also be noted that I don't really have a preference between lightning and fire. I think they both have their pros and cons, and I think it ultimately depends on the meta of your server. which one you want to do, but beware that you should never do a lightning Peter. That doesn't fit because you don't want that spearman in there. Skipping spearman tech and focusing on the 3 other troop types and mortal tech types eliminates extreme amounts of progression time and research time that will just get you a lot further for the same amount of time and speed ups. So the best options, if he was adamant to run lightning, if you are, would be to do something like a William or a Hippo in there. But since we also have multiple magic passives in reserve and we don't have access to Hammurabi, again, lightning is getting scrapped. If you have Hammurabi yourself, if you have a high lightning dragon and you have access to Louis, Charles, whatever, you can run that, or you can do a Hamul, Kana, YSG, William, Richard build. But that's not the case for this guy, and it's not going to be the case for free-to-plays or low spenders. So we're eliminating lightning from our combat roster. The second thing that we need to figure out is what do we want to focus on? What do we want to be our main, second, third? No, which dragon do we upgrade first? Which Tower of Knowledge skills do we upgrade first? Which dragon talents do we upgrade first? It's you know, some players are doing all 3 marches at the same time. You know, upgrading the dragons one by one, or maybe doing like a few more levels in one and then catching up on some others. Don't do that. Invest in 1 dragon, get that main up, then continue on to your second. Since this player is heavily invested in the water dragon, and it's far further along than any of the others, we're gonna run that as a main, and I suspect that is the case, at least it is for most of you reaching out to me. You've been maining water for a long time, and your other dragons are far behind. If you have them all maxed, then take your pick. You can run any of these 3 as your main setup. But we're gonna stick with water for this guide, and we're gonna stay the course. Keep that. Small adjustments are to be made if you choose to run the fire as a main, and even less for the hybrid. So instead, you know, we are going to be doing second and third team. We're not going to be focusing on them in terms of upgrading dragons and Tower of Knowledge until you finish your main. Instead, we will be setting up builds that fit each other, and sort of a goal. You know, this player doesn't have everything completed yet, so we're going to be doing a goal of where do we want to end up once we complete everything out. So my recommendation for all 3 builds, we got some pretty scattered passive combinations going on. However, we do have quite a decent setup for water as is. What I'm going to do is move around a bit, you know, making small adjustments to fit the current meta. And you should of course be critical of these and critical of all passives, because they are based on a sub metas of each server, each SVS, each IB, each arena. But it is I'm gonna set up some solid things that you can follow and change up a bit as you go. Moreover, we're gonna make as I said, you know, a clear goal for how the second and third are gonna look once we're finished building out this entire 3 March loadout. This sets up quite a nice goal for our kind player here to work towards, and most importantly, once it's achieved, you know, once he's built it out, then he is in an excellent position to further improve and develop into later game pay-to-play models if he so chooses. You know, you can do some very interesting things if you spend, if you're like a mid spender, and you can get the KVK models. If you can get Seon and Trajan, stuff like that, you could do some interesting thing with fire. Likewise, running Bathory is going to improve your water quite significantly. All things that you can work towards, and if you want to maintain a no spender thing, you can swap into an Earth Hybrid main. What I'm going to be doing for this one is that we are turning the water into sort of a standard control-centric setup with Merlin as our core DPS, Yoshi as our support. That translate well into the battery development as you progress into the end game. As for the fire, we're building a full offense fire. We're maxing out its burst crit potential. With a bit of luck, you can take out a huge chunk of HP on and troops on even marches with much higher power with offensive fire setups like this. Lastly, our hybrid is going to be a pretty standard Earthwind hybrid with only very few modifications. Since we are not running it as a main, but basically the hybrid is able to get massive value out of a lot of the Tower of Knowledge skills, which are terrible to use anywhere else. That means that what you're going to be running here is almost identical to what you would run if you mained it, and that is again one of the big strengths of running these three marches. They line up well. So let's just dive straight on into the juicy bits you are here for. The water setup. We are going to be running Merlin with Concentration, Annihilation, and Death Breath. We're gonna run, and that's pure damage. We want to maximize the output of our Merlin. He is our damage, and he is extremely good at it. For Yoshi, he's gonna be our support bitch. He's gonna be running Assist, Malice, Absolute Defense. Absolute Defense can be changed. I have seen someone running Lifelink, getting some offensive capabilities that way, or running stuff like Rage Blessing or other stuff in there. That is based on does your Yoshi disappear in seconds or not. For Herald, you want to run Misleading, Energy Suppression, and Oaken Guard. That's a basic Herald setup. We are doing Misleading to get some dodges in, bit of survival, especially in this physical dominated meta. That's an excellent way for an otherwise squishy setup to survive. Energy Suppression, mandatory talent. For a main like this, you will be fighting the waters, the lightnings, the fires, and Energy Suppression is just a god tier Tower of Knowledge skills for fighting those setups. Oaken Guard, again, it's a physical meta. If you are only fighting against big magic damage, obviously Misleading and Oaken Guard should be replaced. Attila, you want to run Adrenaline Rush, Fighting Will, and Fighting Master. Basically, he is going to be our... he's going to do what he does best, and that is control the battlefield like no one else can. With Adrenaline Rush and Fighting Master, he cannot be stopped, and he will regen really quickly. That means a lot of silence procs. And I know that many think that silence and Attila is not very good, but he is, even though the seconds total that he silences can sometimes be look a bit low. The fact that he has a lot of silence hits means that he has quite a high chance to actually interrupt ultimates, which clears the entire energy bar of the enemy. That's a massive mechanic that people underestimate. We're also going to be running Fighting Will there, just because the added damage and control from that is quite excellent in this type of semi-squishy mains. For the Fire Gilga secondary, we are running Gilga with Anger, Chaotic Blade, and Onslaught, stacking up damage for our dear Gilga. He's got a bit of a ramp up, but once he gets started, he really does dish out quite a lot of damage and is excellent at following up the burst of Wu in actually taking down the enemy. Leading to Wu, you want to run Chase, Toxic Nova, and Rage. Two important things here. I'm not entirely sure whether this was a bug at all or intentional, or whether it's been fixed or not, but I do know that at some point you were not able to run Fire Nova and the Fire Dragon Breath at the same time because they're both burning effects. If that's still the case, never run Fire Nova with your fire, because they override each other. Doesn't make sense. Always want to run Toxic Nova instead, because it's a different effect. It's not a burn. We're doing Rage because we need the added crit to ensure consistent chase procs. If you have enough crit to consistently proc chase without Rage, then you can go double Nova or go Root instead. No, I just said Fire Nova is bad, but what I mean is it's just worse than Toxic Nova. After the Dragon Breath runs out, Fire Nova's dot can appear as well, and you do still get the instant damage, which can proc chase. If you have access to some of the big Tower of Knowledge, the new skills, if you are in Season 3 and you have banked Season 3 of Legion of Frostborn, and you've been banking all your cold coins, you may have Spell Disintegration at this point. You really want that on your Merlin, swap out the Annihilation and add that down here to your Woo instead. For Hippo, you want to do Energy Burst, Sacrifice, and Garrote. So basically we are getting as much of an energy regen boost as we can to Hippo. We are praying that Sacrifice procs energy, and we're doing Energy Burst in a crit build in order to pump up quite extreme energy regions, making Hippo an excellent controller. She will reduce the enemy energy region quite significantly. Garrote is just nice added damage. For William, you want to run Weakness, Blessing of Rage, and Resist. Oh, and it should be noted for Hippo that Garrote is damage, but it's also, we're not running it on William, even though he has slightly higher physical attack stats, and that's because we want it to proc Energy Burst for Hippo. Now, if the ultimate doesn't ensure continuous Energy Burst procs, keeping it on the internal cooldown, then the Garrote procs are going to take care of that. For William, Weakness, Rage Blessing, Resist. He's our support here. We're running Weakness, of course, because we are doing fire crit builds. That's stacking up crit to quite insane heights. Rage Blessing, we want as much energy regen as we can, unless of course we are doing this underwater. In that case we just swap around what we got there. Same thing with Resist. For our last setup, the Earthwind Hybrid, we're running Xeno with Berserk, Blessing of Speed, and either Lifelink or Afterimage. That depends on the physical damage, the physical or magic nature of your enemy. If you are against someone doing with a lot of mages, then you want to run Lifelink to get a little offensive pressure from Xeno, whereas against physical, especially front loaded damage, you want frontline damage. You want after image to ensure a few dodges on your march. That works kind of the same way as Manko in Holy, gets that nice boost to your dodge chance in the beginning of the game. Kin, whatever. Coercion, Blessing of War, and Blessing of Defense. Mandatory talents, we are stacking front-loaded damage. We are doing only physical damage, so we're running Coercion because we don't want anything being dodged. And Blessing of War, Blessing of Defense is just fits extremely well because this setup has no ramp up at all. Right out of the gate, both Hannibal and Alex deals massive damage. Cleave, Shelter, Heavily Thunder. That's going to be used on Hannibal Walker. You're going to load out a lot of Cleave, spread pressure from Hannibal, which leads nicely with your Alex, where you're doing the complete opposite. You're running him as a single target master with dual master, ensuring that you're also immune to wound effects. So Alexander actually regains HP even on troops, even against Quins and Khans with wounds. You're running combo for the awesome added damage, and absorb to ensure consistent regen. Just keeping Alex topped and on high troop count means he deals so much damage. It works quite well having Hannibal Barca do spread pressure, your cleave damage, because you suddenly have one enemy frontliner who's taking massive single target hits from Alex, while he is also receiving AoE split damage from Hannibal Barca's attacks. That's the 3 builds. If, as I said, there's quite this is a goal for this player, and there are quite a lot of excellent ways to continue building upon these 3 setups. They are made as part of a pathway series on how you can progress from early stages through to the end game, and eventually continue into the pay-to-play Immortals if you want to do that. So for instance, going into a Bathory or a Himiko water main and a Xeon Trajan fire build is excellent and will compete at the highest of end games. Anyway, you can read more about that and the other guide builds that I have in this progression pathway guide collection. I will add the links down below. That's it for this one. I hope that you got some inspiration, that some of you got some value out of this, and that you are gonna be continuing to grow and develop into some awesome marches. Do reach out if you have comments and ideas. I'm always around somewhere. As always, please do subscribe to the channel. I consistently release new content here on the IK channel and on the official IK Wiki website. Links are in the description. On these channels you can find guides from everything in IK, from events to talents, passives, finished builds and game mechanics. With that, I'm gonna leave you, and as always, thank you for watching and see you for the next one.